This is the Disruptive Voices of the Pacific podcast, and we are doing a really special series on sex, dating, relationships, and everything in between. Tonight, I'm joined by Mr. Daniel Wood.
Thank you for having me, Letitia. It's going to be a good night. Hopefully we can answer some questions.
Yes, we've got a few episodes we want to run through, but this particular episode is around particularly the role of fathers when it comes to helping their children, guide them through sex, dating, relationships, and everything in between. Big role, and I think as you're discovering that so many of our social ills come back to the lack of fathering. What would you say about that here in Fiji? Where are our fathers up to?
We've just gone through as a church, and you know very well, we've been going through the World Needs a Father training with a great friend of ours, Tomasi Tiko, and he's been part of this movement for the better part of a decade now. Sad to say that, I only really caught on to it recently when we've been doing the Love Super work with our foundation, where we're trying to trace back the root cause of where we are as a nation, where we are as not just a nation, but, if we look internationally at the problems that we have in society, we can firmly place a lot of the responsibility on men, on husbands, on fathers, not taking up their true responsibility within, not taking up their, divine role that God intended us to have, which is to lead spiritually and not just provide financially and not just provide security, but, to lead within the home, within the workplace, and so on and so forth. So we're, even when we go through the World Needs a Father, Tomasi runs through all of these statistics. A lot of them are US-based and a lot of them are South Africa-based, because the author, Kasi Carstens, he's from South Africa. And the same kind of things. And, if we had a lot of the statistics to back it up, but you and I know anecdotally, so much of the problems that we're having, same thing, a lot of mothers raising children, which by default is their position, because a lot of the men, even though they could be married, are absent. Men are sitting around tānoas, away from home, staying, doing work late, so on and so forth. And then if they are there, we're absent, kind of not there, present, whether it's, where our mind is somewhere else. Or we think our job is just to hand the paycheck over, whatever's left of it at the end of the week, and give it to our wives, and then they're the ones that rear the children. So I'm just, we're just seeing it as I'm not saying it's a silver bullet, but it really, I think if we can sort out our men in Fiji, it'll go a long way to really helping our wives, helping the women of Fiji, helping the massive welfare issue that we've got in Fiji as well. Just so much of it, I think, it can be done through our sorting out our men.
It's huge, and I've spent 20 years working with girls, and it's actually the father who gives a girl her sense of self-worth and value. So, just saying who you are is enough, and when they don't always get that, they're searching. So they're searching for Johnny, who's addicted to porn, and he thinks, wow, this is my lucky day. She wants love and I want sex. Yeah. So you've got two young daughters. How old are they?
I've got a 16-year-old, about to turn 16, and another one about to turn 13. So right now they're 12 and 15.
So they're at vital ages where the boys are beginning to look. How do you I guess, endorse the girls in your family? How do you build them up? What do you do as a dad to make sure they know they're loved?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and something that we had been doing just because we love our children, not necessarily taught that, although we did learn a lot, both Sariana and I, just by observing our parents. But I guess you could say we come from a lot of traditional Fijian households where there's not a lot of affection, formally. It's done in a lot of different ways, we're having this discussion during the World Needs a Father training, and a lot of our Fijian men agreed that there's no real way of asking how your child is, how they're going, how they feel, what are they going through. And there's not necessarily that love language specifically to say, hey, I love you, I think you're doing amazing. It's kind of, it's not a taboo, but it's just, I think, can be really awkward because we've inherited a lot of our behavioral responses, from our parents, and that's just not the way it's being done. So, for our daughters, very importantly, and I learnt this through The World Needs a Father specifically, is mothers play a massive role in the first 6 years of child's development. And we were just so blessed that I was working predominantly through that time, and Sariana got to stay at home with the kids. And so both of our children had Sariana at home for both the first 5-6 years of their life until they could go to school. And I think our children have really benefited from that. And we'd made that commitment, that one of us, because my wife's a medical doctor, so I could have stayed at home. But I think God really did have that role for my wife, Sariana, to be able to spend every day with them, read with them. Sariana would go through, this mantra of saying, you're loved, you're important, you're valued, you're more than a conqueror in Christ Jesus, just speaking the promises over our daughters right from a very young age. So I think they have an expectation. It's not an arrogance, but just maybe understanding their worth and their value. And so we just try and reinforce that as much as we can. And I was telling you a story just before we started, but I don't want to embarrass anyone. So, but, we're at that stage where, we're really, boys are showing interest and stuff like that. And it's like, hey, those young men are, Christian young men as well, and their parents are really impressed with their upbringing and everything like that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for our daughters, we believe they're kingdom girls, and so they've got a different language, they've got a different way of interacting, and also we just don't believe that, and we've tried to impress that upon them, is that they're not ready for that, they're not ready for dating, they're not ready for boys. There's a lot more things that we need to equip them for or with before they're ready, to be able to pursue a suitor or whatever you want to start courting or whatever you want to call it. The main thing is we're just, Addison, our youngest, is about to turn 13, and we want to go through this rite of passage with her. And we want to let her know, we love you and God loves you. And that's where you get your identity from, is from God. And that before any man can love you, you need to love God first, because that's where, you're going to, when everything can go upside down. Everything's good when it's cruising, right? It's when things hit the fan that's when you're going to have a solid foundation, So, with our girls, we really want to go through that rite of passage. Amelia's 16. We want to do that with her as well, and just really affirm her. We want to know that she's loved, so that she's not unequally yoked when it's her time to choose a partner, if that's her choice. We've never ever said, hey, you need to get married or you need to do this. It's just, if you feel compelled at some stage. I think the problem with a lot of our young women is they end up settling, and, I said, I don't want you to settle down. We say, oh, you got to settle down. I want you to settle up. I want you to have a man that's worth, you following, because I do want him to be a leader in that household. So one of the things that really from The World Needs a Father was I had to come to terms with, hey, am I the kind of man that I'd want my daughters to marry? And then if I am, I've got to really take responsibility. And so I spoke to them. I said, girls, what I'd really love? The kind of guy that I want you to marry is someone like me. Someone, and I got to say, when I first met Sariana, I'm not the same guy that I was when I first met her. I definitely love the Lord a lot more. I serve a lot more. I'm more committed to my wife than I was when I first married her. And so, I think I've grown a lot on this journey. And so, like, telling my daughters that I've got to start taking ownership over my behavior as well, the way I talk, the way I act. They want to watch everything that I do. As soon as I declare that I'm the kind of man that I want you to marry, then I'm like watching everything I say, how I treat my wife, how I treat them, the kind of, attitude I have when I enter the house. Because I said to them, I go, I don't want you to, just say a man ticks 9 of the 10 boxes you have, but he misses that one box. He doesn't love the Lord. Well, that one box is enough just not to. And I go, there's a lot of young Christian men that are saying all the right things, going to all the right places, but they're living a kind of a double life. And I'm aware of that, and I want my daughters to be aware of it, so they don't just settle down, but they settle up, you know.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Now, your daughters are in a very good position because, you know, fathers like you are few and far between, especially in Fiji where men seem to die, or they're overseas on the workers program, or they're off with another woman. So I just feel like there's such a lack. So there'll be some young women watching this going, well, who do I look up to? and the reason why so many girls settle is because they've never had a role model of how a man should treat a woman. So what do those girls, what do those young women do? Do we just let them trial and error? Or how can they find some inspiring men?
So our plan at our church and the Love Suva churches, which I think you've probably discussed already up until this point, is that, you know, we want to roll out the World Needs a Father program to all our men, not just fathers, but grandfathers and young teenagers as well. Why? Because it's not something that we need to hide. It's not something, wait until you graduate before you understand what it is to be a father or a husband or a man. It's like, if you're ready to receive that, like I'd love all of our young men. And then I said, I'd like our daughters to read the book as well and understand what it is, because, you know, we all need to be kind of speaking the same language. So if you don't have that as a young woman, I'd pray that you'd be able to find it within your church. So men that are, how can you say, released to be able to empower young men and young women, in this area, to be able to help with their identity. Because, you know, that was what we were talking about with Matthew 17:5, which was, a father confers identity. He also affirms potential, and he also, at the end of it, he provides security, and then the last one is he provides moral authority. So he sets us on our course as fathers. That's our job, our role. Really serious stuff. And so if a young woman doesn't have that, yeah, it's true. They end up seeking it in a man, and unfortunately, that man could be the father that's in their household that could be abusive, that could be, damaging the household. And so that's what I meant about settling down. You end up kind of bringing your standards down to the nearest kind of value system that's in your vicinity. So this kind of leads on to this big responsibility that all of us men have in the church to help, like the village raising the children in the church. So when we see that young man struggling or that young girl struggling, we can come alongside and be that father role model to them, and say, hey, I'm here. How can I help you? How can I help you through this situation? And every church has to do it in their own way, but ideally it would be like a couple. So I see it as, say, me and Sariana taking on that role, or you see Ronnie and Stella, Kirk and Tamara. It's something that we can do together as couples, where we partner together. It's not just a man that goes off and does his own thing, but it's a ministry for couples. And
definitely,
it's
huge. Huge. And in my own city back in Australia, I've seen us take this into the community, to so many broken girls from families, seen how the church has mothered and fathered a community. Earlier in one of our past episodes, we were interviewing Richie and Natha, and they were giving us a bit of an insight into the boys' culture here in Fiji. And one went to QVS, the other one to Suva Grammar, and kind of just the sexualised, pornified culture that seems like most of our boys. What can we do to teach our teenage boys because now's the time to prepare them, not when they're married. How do we start preparing them to be the fathers that the next generation needs?
Well, massive question there. And, I would love, I know we can't rewind, but just getting rid of social media. If you're a parent listening to this, both our daughters don't have a phone. They don't have social media accounts. That could be considered modern day torture.
That's abuse.
Or abuse. But we believe that we have we are making the right decision for our children, and if that's if that goes against the current trends, I feel a lot of parents are making some bad decisions around social media and around phones and things, and they think their kids need a phone. They don't need a phone. And man, that phone is such a window to so much heartbreak and trauma. And I know I'm putting a lot of blame on it, but so I've gotten rid of all social media. I'm no longer on social media. I just have Messenger to be able to speak to my friends and stuff like that, and WhatsApp. But it started, it almost became an idol. It used to rob me of a lot of time. So the last 2 years of getting rid of it has been so liberating. You come into the house and you're just talking with your family. You're at the dinner table and you're communicating with one another. So in terms of like the young men, it sounds so simple, right? Disciple them, and what does that look like? It's hanging out with them. A lot of young men really want to hang out with older men. They want to engage in masculine activities. They want to, and during those activities, you get that chance to speak life into them. You get your chance to impart wisdom. They learn about their own strength as well. And I think in a lot of ways, that's why we're getting a lot of emasculated men, effeminate men within Fiji, is because we're not doing those things, So a lot of our young men are spending a lot of time with women, their mothers, and so on and so forth. And we think, they're going to graduate to become men one day. It's like, no, we're going to have to teach them, and what does that look like? Well, it looks like, engaging in activities that, being outdoors with them, helping them with their schoolwork, talking to them about real things, not just like expecting them to understand how to date or how to, approach a woman, I was talking with a young man recently and I'm like going, he was asking for prayer. And I said, I really feel God's telling me that, no one's ever taught you how to be a man or how to approach a woman. And that's how they ended up engaging in pornography, is because it's much easier to get gratification from watching a porno movie than it is can you imagine the nerves these guys have approaching a young woman for the first time? And so he's like just scared out of his mind. And hey, he's never learned that. We've never given him any skills to be able to, skills, don't get me wrong, but just to be able to carry out a conversation with another person, another human being of the opposite sex, And so you end up retreating into this fake world, and again, having phones just allows them to retreat like that. They're living a hidden life away from everyone else, and it's really sad to see that happening, So, even funny things like my daughters and I, like this week we got into like slingshots. I don't know how we got into it, but I guess because they're girls and I don't have any sons, we end up doing a lot of guy things,
right.
I took her to the gym, so Amelia and I went to the gym. She likes lifting weights and stuff like that. So we go into the gym and we ran into Tamara and Melania and all of them were at the gym and we're just doing stuff, So how do we do it? I go, we love to have conferences and stuff in Fiji. We don't have to do that. It's just like, let's just be parents. And wherever I go, take your daughter with you or take your son with you and let them know your business. Let them go to the gym with you. Take them out. Maybe if you weren't spending so much time around the Kava Bowl or engaged in church activities, you could spend more time actually rearing your children, so.
Sounds a bit like what Jesus did, actually.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we can do, yeah.
Sounds. Now, before we finish off this episode, because we're going to do some other episodes about dating and sex, so make sure you watch those as well. Just a challenge to any fathers listening, what would you like to, without beating them on the head, how can we encourage them to really take their place?
I don't. Sorry, if I came across like bashing men, that's not at all, because I got to say, guys, I'm in the same boat. I'm in the same boat and not really realizing, in a lot of ways we just defer to our wives, even in spiritual leadership. That's a woman thing. So, for instance, in the church now, I'm saying, hey, Sariana, you've been leading in kids' church. Can I come and help you out? Because there's a role that us men fulfill from the ages 7 to 11. That's when we come in, right? So ages 1 to 6, that's when the women pay their maternal role, and then the paternal role of really conferring identity and setting that young man up for success, or that young girl up. That's from that age. So in kids' church, so important for us men to be involved in that, and so just trying to plan forward where it's not just Sariana, it'll be me and her that's there, because sometimes the young boys are getting out of control, and they need that man in there to say, hey guys, settle down in there, so there's a lot of things that as men, I just really want to encourage us that, man, when we can get our roles right, when we can step up to the plate, and we'll see changes happening in our society. We'll see our families get better. We'll see our daughters with better men. I really want to disciple some good men in our church. Why? Because I want my daughter to marry a good man. Like, it's in my best interest to make sure the young men in our church are healthy, spiritually, physically, emotionally, so that, so if my daughter's looking for a young man to marry and stuff, there's a good guy there, and 100% possibility that she'll find someone in another church. So we want all of our churches to be active in this, raising good young men and young women, so that's the next generation,
For a young man watching this, because you don't necessarily have to be a father to do The World Needs a Father. It's getting on the front foot, but whether you're a father or father-to-be, how can they where do they do this course?
So we're planning to run probably the first group course of this kind coming up. And I think you can even probably share my email, daniel.wood@hillsong.com. And so we're planning to run our first course coming up in the next, I always think USP semesters, so in the next USP semester. And I know Tomasi would love to know if there's, more interest in this. But it doesn't run through one person. The whole idea is a movement. So we want as many young men or fathers, husbands, to be able to run this program within their church, within their community. There's so much that can be gained from it. It's not just one person that goes around doing all the work. It's similar to you and your Bella work. Like you want to empower people to keep on growing. So we want to train more men so they can train more men, so that, we just really kind of spread that all throughout our community, right, through our city.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, it's a challenge, but it's doable, and I'm encouraged by the amount of amazing fathers I do meet here in Fiji, but we need more, because, I always say to people, we don't have a suicide problem or a teen pregnancy problem. It's generally a fatherless problem. That's where the majority of these issues stem back to. So thank you for your passion, and we look forward to seeing more great fathers. So thanks for joining us today, and we will be back with another episode of The Disruptive Voices.